Welcome to the November the 26th, 2002 taping of It Happened in Grand Prairie. As we bring you the history of our city and some important happenings that we know that you would want to know about our city, and we're so pleased that we have our history tape number 474. And we're very delighted today to have a very special young man from the city of Grand Prairie, Mr. Romeen Kabari, and we're just so pleased that he's on the set with us today. He is a very important person in water, wastewater, downflow, all of the good things that we need to know about rivers, creeks, and streams, and surface water in Grand Prairie, Texas. And before I bring him front and center to let him begin our reasoning for being here, I wanted to let you know about my reasoning for inviting him to our show today. Several years ago, Mayor Charles England, our illustrious mayor, appointed me as a member of the West Fork of the Trinity Trails, of water excitement that is going to happen here in Grand Prairie sooner or later. And it would be a trail along the West Fork of the Trinity Trails through Grand Prairie, Texas, near the Trinity River. And we're so pleased that we're able to bring you some facts about this. In the research that I had done, I had come up with some maps that were very exciting to me, and when I asked for a survey of the city of Grand Prairie from its original founder, Mr. A.M. Deckman, I asked for a map or a survey of the 239.5 acres that he originally owned here in Grand Prairie, within which are the 50 acres that are the downtown Grand Prairie part of Grand Prairie when he founded the town. Now, when I had the survey done, I found that because of the figures that we had now that I gave to the surveyor, he could not map Grand Prairie at the portion where it's located at this time. And that was very distressing until I found for sure that the Trinity River, the flow of the Trinity River was changed, which it takes an act of Congress and the whole world probably okaying it to change the flow of a main river such as the West Fork. But they changed that in order to build I-30, which at that time was a freeway and a toll road. So I just needed to have Romeen come in and tell us how exciting it is to change the course of a river and find out that your maps from one decade do not match the maps of another. And Romeen, we're real pleased to have you here, an expert for the city of Grand Prairie in the flow of rivers and streams, and you brought this beautiful map of all of the, not only the streams and the rivers and the little creeks in Grand Prairie, but it shows Mountain Creek Lake over to the side and Lake Joe Pool down at the bottom, and even the streams that flow in and out of Mountain Creek way down almost to Venus, Texas. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about the Trinity River, the things that you would want the people in Grand Prairie to know about their very own river.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Appreciate that wonderful introduction. I was very excited when you called me up and asked me to be on your show to tell the folks a little bit about the history and a little bit about what's going on. One of the things that we have done over the last couple of years, and of course with your help as well as the historical commissioners, to be able to come up with names for all the creeks that we have in the city, and that's also reflected on our map, and we'll discuss that in a little bit.
Okay.
But like you mentioned, in this area, as far as Grand Prairie is concerned, in our northern portion of our city, north of I-30, we basically have the Trinity River, which is the West Fork of the Trinity River. And what I did was I brought along a map of the Trinity River to share with the audience to show you its location in regards to the other creeks that we have running through our wonderful state of Texas. Trinity River is basically a long river, and we have various different branches of it. It basically goes all the way to the Archer and Young counties in the central part of Texas, and we have the various different branches. And along it, as you know, in Texas, we did not have too many lakes. But over the years, one of the things that the Corps of Engineers has done for flood protection as well as recreation and as a water supply is they've built various numerous lakes along the river itself.
How many branches of the Trinity River do we have near the Metroplex, like the West Fork, the East Fork, the Central Fork, or what other forks are there?
Well, that's a very good question. And to answer your question, I have another map for you, and that explains that. In Grand Prairie, we have the West Fork of the Trinity River that basically goes through our city. And it is, of course, downstream of Fort Worth. And there, basically, the West Fork works its way through a couple of the lakes out there, Eagle Mountain being one of them. And it works its way through. And just a little bit past Irving, it matches up in Dallas, actually, with the Elm Fork of the Trinity River. It all matches up, and it goes through downtown Dallas, and there, I'm sure you've noticed when driving down I-30 before getting to downtown area, what we have there are levees which protect and contain the river itself.
Yes.
And actually, I always like to say one of the interesting facts that those levees were built from a lot of the dirt that came from Grand Prairie.
Yes.
And that is reflected on the map up here, and we will discuss that in a little bit. But as far as Grand Prairie is concerned, we have two of our major lakes, again man-made, and of course the first one that has been around for a very long time, it is Mountain Creek Lake.
Yes.
And that actually is really interesting because the lake itself, on the eastern portion of it, we have a power plant.
Yes.
And the power plant actually used this reservoir for the cooling water for the plant itself.
To make electricity.
To make electricity.
Yes.
As a side benefit, one of the things it also provided back then was flood protection.
Yes.
However, over the years, as development took place in the area, and we were having greater and greater problems with flooding, one of the things that was worked on is to build another lake upstream of Mountain Creek.
Yes.
And that's how Joe Pool Lake came about.
All right.
And it is on a couple of our various creeks that feed into it. One of them is Soap Creek, further down south. Another one of them is the Walnut Creek that basically discharges, and that's basically the natural flow that came to that area. And so the dam was built upstream of Mountain Creek Lake to provide various different functions. One of the main ones, of course, being for flood protection.
Yes.
It's really interesting to note that the way this dam was designed, it will contain all of the 100-year flood that we would get in the area. So in addition to the recreation use of the area, we do have our Estes Park, and we're excited about what's happening in that area with the new development coming in. And so it also provides drinking water, and right now we have the city of Midlothian getting the water supply from Joe Pool Lake, and our city also has rights to it.
Yes. All right. Now, also across the Lake Joe Pool Reservoir, we have a nice road across there, and a bridge, so that we can go all the way. What used to be Old Beltline Road, which was closed in order to fill in this lake.
That's correct.
But now we have a wonderful arterial that goes all of the way out to the lower part of Grand Prairie, but not all the way to our new city limit, and especially to our ETJ, the extraterritorial jurisdiction that we have our eye on, that's under our jurisdiction if we're able to develop it. And that would take us all the way down to Venus. And what kind of rivers and streams do you have all the way down there? Are you working on that too, Romeo?
Basically, right now, we will be in the near future doing some master planning, which is to study the various creeks down there, the Salt Creek, like Walnut creeks that I mentioned. And that would be to basically define the areas that flood. And that would be a good segue into a little bit of a discussion as far as what we do here with the city to go ahead and be able to watch out and make sure we have means of protecting homes such that they're not built in the floodplain.
Now, we did have a mud area north of I-30, an area right in the middle of the basin. That is in the real floodway portion of the West Fork of the Trinity Trails area, and that was filled in this mud process by Mr. Trammell Crow and his company, and then they built all of this area and brought it up out of the floodplain. How do they do that? Who gives them the authority to be able to fill in and do all of that? They don't just go in and start hauling dirt, do they?
No, they don't. And actually, that's one of the most important things that we as a city do to protect our citizens, to ensure that nobody floods when we do get those big rains. And actually, one of the things is that we have gotten some of these big rains in the previous years. And what I did was I brought along a map out here which shows the section along Trinity River that has flooded. This was
the West Fork?
Of the West Fork of the Trinity River. And this picture right here shows actually an aerial photograph that was taken to be able, this one's right there at 360. And actually, as you can see, all the frontage roads were flooded at that time. The main lanes were still open.
The light blue is the part of the flood, isn't it? The water.
The water is basically the murky color that you see, the brownish,
the brownish
water, and that's actually with some of the silt that had gotten washed into the river during the big floods. But that shows an aerial picture right after the flooding to show you the extent of the water spreading out there. And so one of the things that we do working with FEMA, which is the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which is to basically study, go out there, take cross sections and survey areas, and then be able to simulate as to how high the water would get based on the flows that would be coming from upstream and all the development that has taken place, and then to be able to define the areas that would flood. So with that in mind, I have brought along another map.
Well, let's look at the rest of this. I want you to get me down to Johnson Creek. Are we anywhere near Johnson Creek?
That is right there. Boy, perfect timing.
Perfect timing. That's Johnson Creek. And we really did go in and do some work there with the Corps of Engineers, didn't we?
That is correct. And basically the area to the left, if you move it over a little bit there, that finger that you see come in right there, basically we have Carrier Parkway, and that's Northwest 19th Street forking out on the bottom right-hand portion of your, or left-hand portion of your screen. And you see that finger runs through that area with the water in it.
Look how much water was covering the land there. Isn't that remarkable?
That is a substantial amount. And actually, we worked with the Corps of Engineers to come up with that project to build a gabion line, which is rock-filled baskets. And that then contained the 100-year flows and was able to protect those homes up there.
If you would take us all the way over to Beltline slowly, Louis, and you tell us when we get to Beltline, see how much water was in that area. That is that anywhere near Beltline yet?
That is Beltline area right there. Actually, and you see if you pan over a little bit to the right there, that is our horse track out there.
That's the racetrack.
And that's a racetrack. And basically, one of the projects that was done working with the Corps of Engineers is to fill in that area.
But look how much flood is in there just south and southeast of the racetrack.
That is correct.
That was a remarkable flood. When was that, in 1991?
That was in 1990.
1990?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And boy, it shows you, of course, there was a good reason why the name Grand Prairie, because we are so flat.
Yes.
And just because of that, the water, when it does flood, it spreads out and it floods the outlying areas. And so basically, this is looking at the levee that was built around the racetrack to contain the water and keep the water from flooding the area.
How about this next map you're going to show us? What is that of?
The next map basically goes along.
That one up for Louis?
Sure. What I have done, this is a great segue, is this is a flood map that was prepared by FEMA that shows this area that we were just talking about. And the parts that we have out there in the blue is the 100-year flood area. And this area that you're noticing, if you would mind helping me here, please? Thank you. Is to go ahead, and this shows the areas that we managed, excuse me, we have it the other way. This is Beltline Road right here, and we have this section of the levee that was taken out of the floodplain, and that's why it shows as white.
Yes.
Whereas all the surrounding areas at that time is lowland and floods. And actually, one of the projects that we're working on right now, as you can see here, Beltline Road does flood.
Yes, it does.
We are working with a project with the Texas Department of Transportation, and that should be under construction shortly, is to redo all of the bridges.
The widening of that and doing the bridges over, right?
That's correct, which would then keep it from getting flooded.
And the West Fork of the Trinity Trails is going right along in that area.
Yes,
yes.
ma'am.
All right, you're helping me out now.
So we, with the use of these maps, then basically anybody living in the area, some of these homes out here that are in the lighter colors, they in turn get flooded during the 500-year storm.
Yes.
But the folks that are in the 100-year storm floodplain area, they have to come to the city in case they want to build it and take special permits. And with that, we have to ensure to make sure they're not in the floodplain. And if they are, they have to basically fill in the areas and run the models to make sure they do not have any adverse effect on causing somebody else to flood.
Okay.
And that's why we basically go through extensive studies, and then we send them over to FEMA for the final approval. And once they approved it, because if you remember in the older maps, this whole area would have been covered. But versus once they got the approval and did the work, they were then able to redo the maps to show it that the section of our racetrack does not flood anymore.
That's wonderful.
And that's why it got taken out of this.
Now, how about across the street on the west side of Beltline, all of the place that used to be the safari place on Safari Boulevard and all of that? Is that ever going to be filled in maybe with the prospect of someone coming in and doing a mud there and filling that in so we could bring that up out of the floodplain?
Absolutely, absolutely. One of the things that we did as a city is working with our neighbor to the north, City of Irving.
Yes.
We did a joint study to look at that whole area and to be able to come up with a scheme such that then they were able to, or will be able to go ahead and build up the area.
Yes.
They will have to provide a tremendous amount of rechannelization to make sure we still contain the floodwaters.
And who has to approve that other than Irving and Grand Prairie?
Then that has to go to the federal government.
Yes.
For them to finally give the final okay.
It's a lot of process, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am. It's a lot of hard work, but it has paid off. And we have a wonderful location being next to I-30. Even though it's floodplain land, it's really interesting what you can do, because one thing I'd like to point out, a project that's under construction right now, and you can drive out there on I-30, see it.
Yes.
It's another reclamation project, which is a South mining project that's happening to the east of MacArthur.
Yes.
And we're really excited about that project because they're building a very big lake out there.
That's
And
Mr. Sowell's property?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, yes.
They're building a lake, and as part of that lake, actually it is a mining operation, so they're there to recover the sand and gravel, which happen to be 30 feet under clay soil. So what they're able to do is to remove the clay soil, build up the areas that were in the floodplain to reclaim that area, and then create this beautiful lake while they're doing their excavation to remove the sand and gravel. So next time when you're going east on I-30, look on the south side, and there's going to be, we're really excited about that. Hopefully it'll create other opportunities for the city to be able to develop that area.
Imagine how many permits they had to get, how long they've waited. Haven't they been into this for about 5 or 6 years?
Yes, ma'am. They've been working at it, and every time they do open up a new area, they have to go to the Corps of Engineers and obtain permission from them to be able to go ahead and do
the next step.
project.
Oh.
Yes, ma'am. We're
All
really
right.
excited about that.
Now, we want to talk a little bit about the streams in Grand Prairie, because I talked with Tammy Chan 3 or 4 years ago, and she said, we're going to get someone to adopt a lot of these streams and to clean them up and keep them nice and all of this. And then we had the historical group to go in and name some of the creeks that had not been named, or else they had generic names and they wanted to make them historical. And tell me a little bit about that process.
Well, as part of our older FEMA maps, a lot of the designations were stream 85D.
Yeah.
And those were just smaller streams that did not have any specific name for them to be able to keep track of. So one of the things, like you mentioned, is we wanted to go ahead and personalize it. And we did have some of our creeks by then already named, like Cottonwood Creek is one that's been there for a very long time. We've had Fish Creek, which has been another one, Kirby Creeks. But however, there were quite a few that did not have names. So working with the Historical Commission, we wanted to make sure that we would also give it a historical perspective as to where some of these folks lived, and to be able to come up with names that would coincide with the general area itself. And so one of the things we've done is basically rename some of them. Let me give you one of the examples over here. This is Goodman Branch right here. We have Santry Branch. These ones are the ones that feed into Johnson Creek. And another one, which was JC1, we've renamed it to Arbor Creek because it discharges this general area. And we have Dalwood Creek that runs through the city. Gopher Creek, since it's basically next to our high school.
Gopher High School.
Gopher Bowl. So that one we named it after Gopher Bowl. And we have the Indian Hills branch, which is in the Indian Hills Addition part of our city. And working through the city itself, we managed to do that. And one of the interesting ones, and I'm sure you can share us a thing or two, is in regards to Thompson Branch, which is on our eastern portion of our city.
Yes, right down below the old Hensley Field, little lake that they had there, and that was named in honor of my parents, the Thompson family.
And so basically moving down south, we have the two forks of Fish Creek or Cottonwood Creeks out here. And each one of the side branches, again, another one, D87, we renamed it to Daniels Branch for David Daniels, who lived in that area. And then we have Rains Branch that ties into it. And all of this comes together in what used to be called Cottonwood Park, which is now McFalls Park. And so basically that all ties over and discharges into Mountain Creek on the northern portion of our city. Moving down south, we have the two forks of the Kirby Creek that tie into and come over and tie into Fish Creek. And Fish Creek is another one of our major
Oh, it is a biggie,
creeks.
isn't it?
That's a big one. And one of the things about some of our larger creeks, they're not local, but since we're downstream of the city of Arlington, we get a lot of their flows coming through our city.
Yes.
And Cottonwood Creek and Fish Creek is two of those major creeks that discharge into the lake itself.
And all of that is above I-20, isn't it?
Well, the North Fork, which was renamed to Prairie Creek over here, that stays on the north side of 20. It matches up south of I-20 at Robinson, then goes under the bridge again, close to our shopping center,
So
Home
it's
Depot
split
area.
on both sides of I-20.
And it joins up in that area at I-20 and works its way all the way to Mountain
To
Creek.
Mountain Creek.
Our southern portion of our city, over here, we have the Rogers Branch, and these basically, again, another tributary of the Fish Creek Branch that ties into it. The Florence Branch is just next to Florence Hill Elementary School.
Yes.
So we tried to come up with names that would be appropriate for the areas. And working our way down south, we get into our extraterritorial jurisdictions, basically talking about Walnut Creek and Soap Creek that discharge primarily into Joe Pool Lake, and they have some of the side branches. We have Lynn Creek, which was next to Lynn Creek Park.
Yes.
And so we tried to make sure we come up with names that would match up and also have some significant historical significance. And that was adopted by the council over a year and a half ago. And so these are now the official names of the creeks that we have in our city, and we're glad to call them by the names.
Yes. Now, how many people do you have working with you that oversee all of these creeks and streams and everything? And you don't do this alone.
No, I do that with
Several
great
other
help
people.
over here. Actually, the city has a floodplain administrator. Gordon Stark's currently in that position. and basically he oversees the flood insurance program in the city, which relates to the areas that flood. So, and then he also has an assistant, Glenn Dixon, who basically is helping us to be able to review the plans that come into the city to ensure that they're done properly.
And even though Tammy is in another department, she is really gung-ho about helping us get someone to adopt these streams and everything. We have about 3 minutes left on our interview, and before we leave, Romine, I'd like to tell you that the Trinity River by Luther Smith, this young man was at the library out at the Betty Warmack Library out on Barden Road, and this is a wonderful book about the Trinity River, and I went to hear his presentation, and he has pictures of the Trinity over the years, and it's a wonderful, wonderful, and a copy of this is in the library if you want to see it. I would loan you this, but this is part of my archives that I save everything on the Trinity River. Because
and I noticed it is autographed too.
Yes, it is. It really is. And when the mayor appointed me to this committee, it is done through the Council of Governments, the North Texas Council of Governments, and we go to meetings about once a quarter, and we're staying on top of everything, and they make me give a report every 3 months on how we're progressing and getting our part of the West Fork of the Trinity Trails done, because a legacy park in Arlington is already completed, and Irving has a lot of theirs completed, and Grand Prairie is sitting out here in the middle of the road. But thanks to Ray Allen, our state representative, we received a $3 million grant from the state if we would match it with $1 million. And so the city manager has promised us that I won't have to do a bake sale or anything to raise that $1 million. We're going to do our best to that $1 million to match the 3 and be able to do at least a starting portion of our West Fork of the Trinity Trail. So
wonderful.
I wanted everyone in Grand Prairie to know that even though we seem like we're sitting still, it takes money to do all of the things that you have done. And I know that we're looking forward to great things to come. So I want to thank you very much for this, and if there's anything that you'd like to say, you have 1 minute to do it.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson O'Hare. Just really excited about the prospects. And one thing is that just a statistic for everyone's information, over 20% of our city lies in the floodplain.
All right, give them your magic telephone number in case they want to call you.
Sure, no problem. It's 972-237-8145. And you're more than glad to call me if you have any questions. We are excited about all the things happening in the city. There's a lot happening in the city. We're there to help everybody to make sure that what we do does not cause any problems, and to be able to satisfy the requirements that are out there. So, and also wish you all the best as far as being able to work on these various projects, and with your help and the council's help, we'll be managing to do a lot of good for the city.
That's wonderful. And I'll let you borrow all of my maps that I have, these old maps before you came on board in Grand Prairie, and you need to add them to your archives.
I sure will.
I want to thank you, Romine.
Thank you very much.
And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do.